I'm Liam.
I'm Wayne.
You're listening to In Film We Trust YouTube.
A place where we post clips from our recent episode.
All links down below in the description.
And now, on with the show.
Strangely, a film that was brought to us by Netflix, Wayne.
It is, as many films are nowadays.
Deserves a big screen, I have to say.
It did, yes.
Though it did win an award at the Edinburgh International Film Festival.
It did. Well, that's where it premiered.
It did?
In 2018. It's like, I'd never heard much about this film beforehand.
No.
It seems that it premiered at the Edinburgh Film Festival, then it was picked up by Netflix, then it vanished.
It was a top award at the Edinburgh Film Festival as well.
It did. It got
the Michael Powell Award.
Exactly.
That's literally that is the Palme d'Or of the Edinburgh International Film Festival.
It is. Not quite as cool a name, but it's still a very
Hey,
prestigious
Michael Powell made Peepin' Tom.
He did, yes.
1960.
So
we could argue it's very much cooler.
Yes, a movie which we have talked about before.
And we will. I'm sure we'll get around to Peepin' Tom.
I think it's a good idea for an episode. But yes, it was.
So yeah, directed by Matt Palmer.
Or Matthew Palmer, as it says on his short
Because
films.
why is he called Matthew Palmer, Wayne? Well, his short films he's credited as Matthew Palmer.
Yes, Matthew Palmer, but Matt Palmer for this is directorial debut.
Yeah, he made several quite a lot of short films, but his most notable was two films, Island and The Gas Man.
Yeah.
And this is his first feature-length film.
Yeah. Have you seen either of his short films? I've not seen them, no.
Completely new to Matt Palmer. But as we're talking about debuts, this actually ties into a film we're going to do next week.
Yes.
Because next week will also be a directorial debut from a filmmaker.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one.
And there's a teaser, folks. And
Yes.
it's a good film.
Stay tuned. If you listen to this, you have to listen to next week's as well.
Or else.
or else, yeah.
Yeah, so Matt Palmer, he's an English director, Kidderminster.
Kidderminster, yes.
As you told me before.
Yes.
And I think he went to university in Scotland.
He did. He studied film at the University of Glasgow.
So clearly that had a demoralising effect on them to make this.
Clearly it informed his background in films.
Exactly, Wayne. And like most films, this film was struck in a single image, because he actually said, this actually ties in again, Wayne. We're very tying in on this episode. Barbarian Sound Studio. Did you think you would hear that on this episode?
No, I didn't.
Well, he woke up in the middle of the night, about 2 a.m., 1 a.m., very early. He was just struck by this single image. And he said, I saw Peter Strickland. There it is, Wayne, director
of Barbarian. Yeah.
Barbarian. He saw a Peter Strickland interview at the Edinburgh Film Festival a few years ago. And he was on stage talking about Barbarian Sound Studio. Here we go. And he said, with the good ideas, it feels like they're sent down mysteriously out of the sky. And it really was like that. I'd sat around trying to think about possible stories and rationally come up with feature ideas. But this one, it was literally channeled into me. It just landed in my brain. And he goes on to say, from there, I very carefully built the film around that single image. And that image... We'll get to it. It's the most striking image of this film. I'm sure you can.
I'm sure I guess what it is.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So it was very much a bolt out of the blue idea.
Exactly.
Yeah. And he says when not just writing this film, when it came to casting, he said he needed people who are quote psychologically believable in every moment, because there's no real big names in this film. The biggest name would be Jack Lowden. Jack Lowden, who plays, because he was in Dunkirk.
He would go on to do Dunkirk.
Yeah.
I think they had just got him not long before Dunkirk.
The producers told Palmer, when you're pitching this idea to Loudon, don't use the term everyman, say, because he's a movie star. But when he sat down to present the script to Loudon, Loudon said straight away, so this is the everyman character then. He knew what this film was.
He knew what it was, exactly. And I think in Dunkirk, was he Tom Hardy's wingman?
I think he was.
I think he was, yes.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has any names in that film.
But Palmer has this love of this horror genre. He's steeped in it. He put on these events at cinemas where he
basically screened films for his friends.
He screened films, yes. And he kind of traces us back to high school, where he had a horror-obsessed school friend, and he was lended or bought a book called The Deep Red Horror Handbook.
Yeah.
And he goes on to say, it listed all these crazy-sounding films, and that was me. I was off and running. Isn't that such an organic way to find stuff?
It is. It's essentially, when we spoke about Censor, another clip, how Prano Bailey Bond had all of these movies on her shelf, and how that informed her movie taste. It's exactly the same here. The guy was like a one-man movie festival.
Was it Psychotropic Cinema? I think that's
Psychotropic Cinema, yes.
That's the one, exactly. He curated all these films and would put events on.
The same kind of thing that Tarantino does.
Sounds like things we'd like to go to, Wayne.
It says, I'd love to go to something like that.
So please invite us.
If anybody has any tickets, please write us some invites. I'd love to do that. But this was his feature film debut.
Feature film debut?
Confident debut.
And what a debut, Wayne.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic debut. How did you hear about this film? Was it me that told you about it?
No, I had heard of it, but you know what?
Yeah.
Annoyingly, is there anything, or do you find there's things released on Netflix that get lost in the mix and you think, oh, this is going to be subpar, it's going to be a load of crap, that's why it's on Netflix?
Yes.
Because Netflix excels a lot. They get prestige filmmakers. You have The Irishman by Scorsese,
Yeah.
and you have films of those ilk, or you have like TV shows like Stranger Things. But a lot of the stuff is, things what deservedly aren't going to the cinema.
A lot of the time, Netflix or these streaming services, they feel like glorified direct-to-video, direct-to-DVD things like, we can't release this movie in cinemas, let's just dump it on a streaming service.
But yeah, the script was 9 years in the making.
Yeah, 9 years between writing the script and making it to the screen.
Why do you think he sat on that as long?
Do you think he was letting the idea develop, or did he just not be able, he couldn't just come up with a decent ending?
Because I saw an interview and he was saying, I would love to just direct films that other people had wrote.
Yes.
But look, when you're a director, I think, first and foremost, you want to be the author of your own story. Like Scorsese, a lot of the times, has a primary writer. He won't necessarily write the scripts himself.
Right.
But when you watch a Scorsese picture, you know that's a Scorsese picture.
Yes.
He knows what to pick, the themes of the thing. The way it's visually told. Mm-hmm. And you can see Matt Palmer's coming from a very, he's coming from his own interpretation. As he says, he's steeped in 70s genre. John Boorman's Deliverance. Yeah. Did you get a very American Werewolf in London?
Werewolf in London, yeah.
Especially at the start.
I've especially written that down. That felt very, very clear.
So he's coming from this genre, and he said he wanted to feel completely 70s genre, not what's became known. You know how we spoke in Planet Terror and we were discussing Grindhouse?
Yes.
And Grindhouse has almost became a genre rather than what would play at cinemas termed Grindhouse.
It became its own thing, basically.
Almost. It became, over the top, cheesy, gory.
Yeah.
Yeah, rather than just... This is very dialed back. It's very deliberately paced.
Almost like very bare bones, you could say.
Exactly.
It's low budget. We got no supernatural elements into it. It's all very earthy, very simplistic.